Greetings, friends, and welcome back to the Musings from the Mount podcast, where we explore the depths of spiritual wisdom and its practical applications in daily life. I'm your host, Joseph Carenza. In today's episode, Michael Lindfield and I dive into the fascinating world of triangles. We'll uncover how this simple geometric shape holds profound meaning across various spiritual traditions and philosophies. From cosmic principles to personal growth, we'll explore how triangles can be a powerful tool for understanding our world and ourselves. We'll touch on topics ranging from the Trinity to Buckminster Fuller's geodesic domes, and even discuss how triangles can help resolve personal conflicts. So sit back, open your mind, and join us as we unlock the power of triangles in our spiritual journey in everyday life. And if you like this podcast, please consider going to meditationmount.org and donating. Your donation helps us to bring you this podcast as well as all the other programs the Mount produces, both today and in the future. We are incredibly grateful and honored by your support. Okay, back to the podcast. During the last podcast, the subject of triangles came up, and this is a fascinating subject, and it's one we haven't really touched on. And in researching, triangles show up in every esoteric tradition, every religious tradition, every philosophical tradition. And so I thought maybe we could take this episode to kind of focus on the concept of the triangle. I mean, everyone knows what a triangle is, but what does it mean in practical terms, in esoteric terms, in personal development? And, and how can these ideas and concepts be applied to everyday life? It's like, one of the things I found fascinating is, this concept of how can a small group of three people come together with a shared intention to create a ripple in the world, and that's, when you think about creative meditation and manipulation of energy and energy follows thought. So this concept of putting these, three people together or three groups together in a triangle, how does that broadcast? How does that manifest?
Wow. Yeah, this subject is vast, Joey. And I'd love to explore all of this, from the cosmic right down to the particular nature of daily life. However, I'd like to start by just sharing a story. I was thinking about this yesterday. Where did I first bump into the triangle? Where did the triangle first bump into me? It was in primary school, which in England was called infant school. I think I was about 8 or 9. And of course, every school has a school band, everyone likes to play music, and people were asked what their skills were. And we had people that could play violin, trumpet, recorders. And I basically just showed up and said, I'm willing to be part of it. And so they gave out instruments for those that didn't bring violins and recorders. And my friend was given castanets, to make a noise. And I was handed this triangle. And I thought, bummer. I mean, is that all I got? Was this metal triangle with a short metal rod to strike it? And I thought, oh my God. What I didn't realize, my soul was sending me this really subtle message. Michael, this is the instrument that you'll be playing throughout your life. This is a Pythagorean tradition that you are part of. And I just took it as a personal insult that they didn't see any musicality in me. But later on, I sort of smiled at it and went, oh, thank you for the message. Thank you so much for that message, because the triangle is central and has been central to everything in my life, not just from an esoteric perspective, but also how we work. As you mentioned before, a group of 3 people. When I start a project, I do it with 2 others. We form a triangle, and we can talk about that. And then the Lucis Trust, which is the organization that distributes the Alice Bailey books, they work with triangles, which is a whole network of triangles around the world that is using invocation, using prayer. I'd love to touch into that. But I wanted to start with my first encounter, this incarnation, with the triangle, which I got over it. I got over it. It's okay. So we can take it from that very sort of mundane classroom level right back up to the structure of the cosmos itself. For instance, we say, in the beginning was the Word. Well, we know from the different scriptures, the Word was A-U-M, a trinity of Aum. In the beginning was the Trinity. And out of this Trinity, everything else was born. For instance, you've got the primary colors. These three primary colors represent the three rays. The first ray of will and power, the second ray of love, wisdoms, and the third ray of active intelligence. And when these three interact, this Trinity works together, you get every other color under the sun that's possible. So even that, the people looking at the screen of their computer or color TV or whatever it is, the reason you can see that is because of triangles. The trinity of light, the trinity of the primary colors. Now, the trinity of the primary sound gave birth to the primary colors because it was light that was born out of sound. In the beginning was the Word, and then light was born. So if you go back to Aum, and this is, I'm going to be jumping all over the place here, hopefully.
That's all right.
In a way that's not too disruptive. I know often we go back to the Agni Yoga teachings. These are the teachings that came through Helena Rurick in the 1930s onwards. And they have to do with an understanding of fire. The Agni Yoga means yoga of fire, yoga of synthesis. And we'll see later how synthesis and fire are together, and how synthesis is basically part of the triangular structure of the universe. Particularly when we look at what Roberto Assagioli did with psychosynthesis, and resolving the pairs of opposites through working in a triangle. There's so much here, Joey. We could probably do 2 podcasts on this one. So here's what the Agni Yoga teachings wrote about the sacred word. The following interpretation of Aum, A-U-M, will also be propounded. The first letter manifested as the basis. The second manifested in the subtlest energies, the third, the ineffable in fire and grandeur. Each interpretation leads to the same triune structure, from which, as from truth, one cannot escape. It's basically saying everything is part of the triune structure. And then there's one more quote from Agni Yoga, and then we'll move on from there. It says, in many countries, when people wish to express a steadfast affirmation, they solemnly pronounce the word Amen. The origin of many words can be traced to ancient sources. When we examine the meaning of the word Amen in Greek, Hebrew, Egyptian, and Sumerian, through many steps we arrive at the same affirmation of the triune symbol, the A-U-N. So Amen is Aum, is a derivation of Aum. You seal something with the sacred seal of the Trinity. Now, so in Christianity, it was not Aum, it's Amen. And the other thing, just by way of correction, if I'm allowed to do something like this, because I grew up in the Christian church and I'm familiar with the terminology, the Trinity, the Holy Trinity. It's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, or the Holy Spirit. And later on, I realized, no, it should be the Father, the Son, and the Mother. So and I will say that the church elders and fathers decided that, Mother had no place.
Right.
Not in this sacred Trinity, anyway. Maybe in the kitchen, but not in the Trinity. And so it was called the Holy Ghost. I believe it's time to reinstate the true triangle. That's absolutely true. Which is the Father, the Son, and the Mother. Yeah. And the Mother, because it's the Father and the Mother produce the third point, the Son. And the true Son of God is S-U-N. rather than S-O-N. It doesn't have to always be a male child.
Mhm.
So it's the restoration of the mysteries we're talking about now.
That's right.
And the triangle that we're focusing on is at the heart of all these mysteries. For instance, if you want to go really cosmic, and whether you believe this or not, it doesn't matter, but this is the story that's told, is that we are in the third, there are 3 incarnations to the solar system, because it takes 3 to manifest all the qualities of the 3 aspects of the Trinity. It's said that the first solar system was built on the square, the 4-sided figure. And during the incarnation of the solar system in this sort of square structure, it had to do with the imbuing of matter with intelligence. Which means that before you're going to build and have building blocks, you've got to make sure the building material also has intelligence and is alive. So that when you pour 2 chemicals into a retort or a beaker together, they create something else. Why is it that when you pour certain substances together, they create a third and different chemical substance? Well, because of the intelligent response of matter. So that it said that was the square. It said we are now in the second incarnation, which is based on the triangle, which has to do with consciousness. So now that you've got matter that can respond intelligently, then what you're doing is bringing the intelligence of matter together with the, if you like, the intelligence of spirit. And when those 2 come together, the father and the mother, what gets born? Consciousness. It's the child. So consciousness is really the second aspect of this Trinity. The sun is the light is born out of the marriage of the note of the father and the note of the mother blending together. Now, if you're going to jump ahead and believe the story, it said that the third incarnation of our solar system will be interlaced circles. And these interlaced circles will be the expression of pure will and purpose. That means the true note now can be responded to perfectly because we have, from the first incarnation of the solar system, the responsiveness of matter. The second incarnation of the solar system, we've got consciousness that knows what it's doing and can respond to the call of itself, its deeper self. So it takes this time to build up the ability to express. So in the beginning was the Word, then the Word rippled out and created all these smaller worlds. Now, these smaller worlds are attempting to come together. So it's interesting that we are living in a particular solar system which has the triangle at its basic. So we're going to go between the high cosmic and then back down to the earth. So if I want to come back down to the earth, I remember back in the late 1960s when I was living in Stockholm in Sweden, Buckminster Fuller came and they put up his dome in the grounds of the Modern Museum. And it was an incredible thing, the Bucky Dome, the geodesic dome. And they had concerts in there, and there were just people gathering there. They had lectures in there. But why did Bucky come up with this particular structure? Because he understood the difference between a square, a rectangle, and a triangle. Because we just talked about these 2 shapes. And he would demonstrate that by asking people to apply pressure to both structures. Put pressure on a rectangle, put pressure on a triangle. The rectangle would fold up and be unstable. But the triangle withstood the pressure because the triangle is more rigid. And Bucky said, in fact, the triangle is twice as strong. And so that's where this understanding of the power of the triangle led him to put together a structure, a sphere, comprising all these triangles, the Bucky Dome. And if you've ever been in one, it's quite amazing. It's very, very spacious, not just because it's a sphere, but because the geometry is not constraining. You feel like you're in this space which is contained and expansive at the same time. And I mean, my dream was always to live in a Bucky Dome.
Yeah.
Maybe there's still time.
There's still time, Michael.
There's still time. So the spherical structure that he created out of triangles was Buckminster Fuller's, one of his many contributions. But he understood the power of the triangle. And so that brought it down to earth as far as a building structure. So where do we take this exploration of triangles? As you say, last episode of our podcast, we talked about a triangle of the head, the heart, and the throat, which in a planetary level was Shambhala, the ashram of the masters, and humanity. So you've always got these things working together in threes. It's how it works. And Agni Yoga, again, talks about the three worlds, that they're interconnected, they're joined together. The three worlds they name as the fiery world, which would be the world of spirit, the Shambhala world, the subtle world, which is the fire of the soul, and the fire of the kingdom of souls, or the realm of souls, which is the ashram. And then there is the manifested world, which is where we have fire by friction, where we have the interactions of humans. And so there's always this trinity. And what we said last time on our podcast, which is a huge aha when you see this in the esoteric teachings, is that all these three fires are present for the first time in one container: human consciousness, the human being. We contain the Trinity inside us. We are the three in one. As a fractal of the universe, we contain the sacred triangle, the Trinity, as our core structure. Therefore, if we're, as the Bible said, made in the image and likeness of the Creator, it's up to us to discover the triangle by living through it and living as it. Yeah. We could segue, if you like, to a more psychological approach and go to Roberto Assagioli, who, as many of you know who've listened to these podcasts, is the inspiration behind Meditation Mount. He was also the founder of a very powerful spiritual psychology called psychosynthesis. And I was privileged to have him as a mentor. I met him in my early 20s, and he sort of kept me from falling off the edge of the cliff and put me back on the path and sort of helped straighten me out. And one of the things that he gave inside of this spiritual psychology called psychosynthesis was this notion of what does it mean to bring synthesis out of duality. So when you get caught in the poles of hot and cold, good and bad, love and hate, whatever it be, he said, if you stand on the baseline of a triangle and the 2 points on the baseline represent the polarities, and you're caught in between the two. One day you're pulled towards one pole, another day you're pulled towards another pole, and then you say, I'm going to do better. Next day I'm going to be better. And then off you go and you go back to the other pole. He said, what you need to do, though, is you need to go to the center point on the baseline where you can feel the tension of both poles, but don't get pulled either way on the baseline. What you do is symbolically, you move from the baseline up towards the apex of the triangle, and as you go towards the apex, you bring with you the 2 poles. And when you arrive at the apex of the triangle, the 2 poles meet and merge as a synthetic point. And that's the resolution of the pairs of opposites he talks about. So you've got that in his psychology, the triangle, and that's why it's called psychosynthesis, because the triangle allows us to bring all aspects of life into the oneness. The other thing, we talked in the beginning was the word, and then the word gave birth to light. Well, when you shine the white light through a prism, which is usually represented as a triangle, you get this magic formula given in the esoteric teachings, 1, 3, 7, 10. The one, through the three, reveals its sevenfold nature, the seven rays.
Yeah.
And then the path of return, how do you then bring these seven rays back into a self-realized oneness, back through a synthesizing function? And the synthesizer is the triangle. So the triangle has this function of breaking up the white light into the seven rays, but also bringing them back together. And without going into too much detail, it's said that in the evolution of the planets and the solar system, a consciousness is synthesized. There are synthesizing planets. So when you're returning back to the one, you're bringing all the experience from the many parts back through the triangle, and through the three, you return to the one. So it's always this 1, 3, 7, 7, 3, 1. We don't have to get hung up in the numbers here, but it is important, because when you look at the three, you realize that it's deep symbology. As we said, we have the Father, the Son, and the Mother. We have the three primary colors. We also have the symbol of the birth of enlightenment in human consciousness, which is a point or a dot within the triangle. And esoterically, that is the symbol of the Christ. So we're talking about not Christ as the person of Master Jesus who became Christed. We're talking about the Christed consciousness, which is born out of the creative tension of the triangle. So when the mother and the father produce the child, this family then, at its heart, becomes a point of Christ light, or the light of the one revealed. So how do you get to the one? Well, how does the one know itself? Well, first of all, it has to go through the three out into the seven and split itself. And then in order to return to a point of self-knowing, then off it goes back through the three into the one. From the I am that, the one, through the three to the I am that, to the I am that I am. This sort of return journey. And so, I know I'm speaking somewhat glibly about these large cosmic concepts, but the only way for me to get a handle on them is to attempt to see them played out in my own life as correspondences, as reflections. So when we talk about the revelation of the mysteries, Joey, we're not talking about somebody's going to hand us this sacred book and say, now you can read it. Here you are, here are the secrets. It's being revealed. It's like an aha moment. The revelation of the mysteries is, well, of course. So when I understand, I'm looking at my computer screen and there's all these colors and images on, I go, oh my God, that's applied science of Trinity. That's the triangle, the triangle of light. And okay, there's so much more. It's like pouring through a torrent. So I want to take a breath and say, well, what's your hit on this? What's the triangle in your life?
This is great because it's really kind of giving us a great kind of birth and wide range of information. I know for me, like the triangle also relates to the triad musically, and that's important. And I've also seen how it pervades like almost every culture and philosophy. So it's really fascinating to see how something so simple, that sort of elegance of a triangle, and you realize, oh wow, this is a much deeper meaning. And obviously Pythagoras, it was the foundational concept. So what I also think is interesting is that how it relates on a functional interpersonal level. So I'd like to maybe get into that too. But yeah, this is fascinating stuff.
Right. Yeah. Well, we can do it at the level of the collective, and we can do it at the level of the individual. So let's start out with the collective. Something that we talked about in the last episode was the network of light, the new group of world servers, these concepts. So what is a network of light? If manifestation is the proliferation out of the one of many, many points of light, when you join these points of light together, what do you get? You get a network of light. A network of light is triangles. So before we go into what a network of light is, I want to just come back because you prompted something in me by what you said about it, how it shows up in the different religions. You've got the triangle of spirit and the triangle of matter. One is ascending, one is descending. And when these two triangles interact and blend, what do you get? You get the Star of David. Mm-hmm. And the Star of David is not just about a Jewish tradition. It represents the blending of spirit and matter, the coming together of the mother and the father. And when that six-pointed star interacts, it produces at its center a new point of light. Therefore, the six-pointed star, these two interlaced triangles, in fact is sevenfold. Because the other point, the point of synthesis, is at the center. And I'm part of a community in Italy called the Community of Living Ethics, and they and other groups around the world use this star formation as a way of organizing, not so much organizing like an organizational structure, an org chart, but understanding how energies flow. Energies flow from purpose through love to active intelligence, and how they need to be augmented by the colors of devotion and scientific application, and how you then need to make sure that the form that lands on Earth really reflects the original intent and the original symbol. So there are ways of working energetically where you are mirroring how the cosmos works. Because that's what we're here to do as fractals. So you've got this, it's called the star work. And it's based on these two interlaced triangles. And you come to Meditation Mount. We've got the three principles and the three pathways, or the three laws as they were called as well. The three principles of essential divinity, goodwill, and unanimity. Now, these principles need to be anchored so the earthly counterparts that help us live those, for essential divinity, it's spiritual approach. For goodwill, it's right human relations. And for unanimity, it's group endeavor. So if you put these two triangles together as these ascending and descending triangles, you get this six-pointed star of the principles and pathways. What happens when the principles and the pathways are lived? At the center of this star, a point of light emerges, which is the revelation of the truth that lies at the heart of everything, which is, as we've been told, called Christ consciousness, or which, once again, is not a religious term. It has to do with the light released when the two poles are married. So anyway, so we work with the triangles here. And as I hinted at earlier, whenever I start a project, you work as a triangle. Why? Well, it goes back to Bucky Fuller. Mm-hmm. If you and I would start a project, it's great, it'll work, but there's an oscillation between 2 points. When you have a third point, it's the first time that energy can circulate around a structure. So the triangle is the first geometric structure which energy can circulate. Right. And this is what we touched on last time with this great triangle of Shambhala, hierarchy, humanity. For the first time, this energy can flow between the three planetary centers, the head center, the heart center, and the throat center, which is humanity. So just to recap, we said Shambhala was the planetary head center. The hierarchy, or the masters of wisdom in that terminology, is the heart center, and humanity is the throat center. What we didn't mention, though, was that this new group of world servers, all the people who have said yes to life, are also being asked to function as the ajna center, which is itself a triangle between the two physical eyes and the third eye. And when thine eye be single, thy body shall be full of light. So what we're being asked to do is to be points of light, to be a synthesizing point of light between the different aspects of the triangle. And I think we mentioned before that for the first time, I think in year 2000, when energy was released into the planetary body through this triangle, for the first time, it came directly to humanity, the will and power. Before it went through the safeguard of going through the realm of souls, the heart center. But ideally, when you function as a planetary triangle, the energy circulates both ways. Humanity, Shambhala, hierarchy. Humanity, hierarchy, Shambhala. So the energy circulates both ways simultaneously around the triangle. I know we're getting a little technical here, but
that's okay.
It's important. If people want to research this more, I would say, just whatever search engine you have, or go to the Lucis Trust. LucisTrust.org has a wonderful gift there. They have online books. All the Alice Bailey books are there for reference that you can look them up online, and you can just do a search. So it's up to us to research and then to apply that research so that it comes alive. So we go back to each one of us as a triangle. Each one of us has a spirit and a soul and a personality, the triune nature. And I guess that's what we're talking about, the triune nature. And it's said that Neptune rules this coming era. Well, Neptune isn't just a watery sign. If you look at Neptune, what's the symbol of Neptune? It's a trident. It's another symbol. It could have been holding a triangle.
Right.
Yeah. So it's everywhere. It's everywhere, Joey. But I wanted just to name that before going into this network of light, because when we join together our points of light, we create a network of light which has at least two functions. One, it's a field of receptivity that can receive the outpouring of, if you like, planetary purpose, or the light supernal that comes from the heart of the sun. And then this network of light can, in its own way, transmit light. So this is where, if you're interested in this, I would say go back to the website I just pointed you to, which is Lucis Trust. So Lucis Trust, I think it's .org, because they have this invitation to work as triangles. Find two other people and become this triangle of light within a network of light, and your job is to sound this world prayer every day, the great invocation, so that you are helping to anchor light on earth. So the triangles activity that the Lucis Trust has been promoting for many, many years is an activity whereby a network of light and goodwill covers the entire planet. And the job of this group is to maintain this. And we work as a network because it's the natural configuration when all the dots are joined together, all the points of light. And a network provides the necessary interlocking strands or channels along which the flow of spiritual energies of light and goodwill can flow. So when you join your little triangle, along with all these other triangles, you become this potent network of light, which in itself is a single unit. And it becomes a way of receiving, amplifying, and distributing the light that's needed on Earth. And the Lucis Trust refers back to the point that we've been making here for the past while. The triangle is a basic geometric figure because it represents the Trinity of the Godhead. So 3 people working as a group provide the 3 linked focal points through which spiritual energy can circulate. We become the fractal of the Godhead, or the fractal of the Creator. We become co-creative agents of light. So the network itself, what is it? Is it electrical threads? Well, yes, at one level, it's built of strands of lighted mental substance. And along this mental substance flows the energy of goodwill, the energy of love. So we have to put in the wiring to allow love to flow on earth and light to flow on earth. And we put in the wiring by linking together each day, heart to heart, mind to mind in these triangles, so that we're actually creating a circuitry out of higher mental substance. It's real, Joy. Mm. Energy follows thought. So and last night, there were several of us watching a spider weave a web out here in the garden. Mm. It was incredible. It knows how to weave a web. A network of strands. We have the same capacity to build this. It's recreating, if you like, this web of life.
Yeah, this energetic web.
It's an energetic web.
I think we feel this disconnect because we're so tied to taking in data through our 5 senses, and just because we can't see it, it's still there. Though we these limitations of interpretation.
Yeah, exactly. So what I'm saying is that inherent in everything is the power to create the structures that are needed to participate in the continuous act of creation. We often think, well, in the beginning was the Word, and that was creation, that's it. No, creation we are part of the ongoing outworking of the threefold word, the Aum. But the other thing about the Aum, it sounded as Om. You can say A-U-M. Now, if you want to double click on A-U-M and get really sort of geometrical about it, what does an A look like? Oh, a triangle. What does a U look like? Oh, the descent from one point down into matter and a return to a higher point. Okay, what does M look like? 2 lines, 2 poles, and in the middle, they're joined with a V. It's the story of creation, A-U-M. Now, how we sound it is Om, O and M. And funnily enough, the logo of Meditation Mount, if you want to look at the logo for the podcast of this series, it looks as though it's a sun or a moon rising above 2 mountains. Yes, it is. It's also O and M as Om. And this was quite by accident. We found out afterwards, wow, somebody came up with this symbol in the 90s for this logo for Meditation Mount. And we went, oh my gosh, it's the Om as well. So I think underlying everything is the Om, the A-U-M. So we don't say Aum, we're told to say Om, because that's how the soul brings light into matter. But the A-U-M is the triune structure of the universe. As I say, you can look at the symbology of it. You start with A, which is the whole thing. But in order for the whole thing to manifest itself, it has to descend from this no thing into something and return to all and everything. And it does that, by going back up the U, and you've got you've got this showing up in systems theory, in change theory. It's called Theory U. A beautiful concept.
Yeah.
And it all comes from the whole descent of the one into matter, into its many constituent parts, and then its return back into a synthetic state of knowing. So the triangle is key to everything on Earth. And and then you get into triangular relationships, and then you get the sort of the sort of tough side of, if you don't know how energy flows purely through a triangle, you learn that by understanding how things can get tied into a knot when you triangulate. Because one of the things you're taught in communication training is don't triangulate.
Okay, yeah.
I don't tell somebody else what I think about Joey. Right. Joey, you and I need to clear something up with you. Look, here it is. Rather than say, going over to somebody, hey, look, God, what's wrong with Joey? I need to have a word with him. No, don't triangulate.
Right.
And yet, God triangulates. God geometrizes as Pythagoras said. Yeah. I mean, he's the geometrician. The creator is the geometrician. Mm-hmm. And the basic structure is the triangle. And we're two triangles talking with each other. Yeah. We're the embodiment of spirit, soul, and matter, or personality. So it's a triangular relationship. You're more than a triangle to me, Joey. Don't worry.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
I'll take that. I'll take a triangle, though. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So what else is sparked when we go through? I mean, we could keep going on this, because it's everything. Everything is reflecting into everything, as they say.
I mean, I feel like we probably need to do another episode on this, because we're barely getting into some of the relationship stuff in terms of like the practical, but I'm still so fascinated with all this information about just the base level of all this. You know, it's I mean, I know like you have an entire sheet of notes that you wanted to come in with. So I mean, I think we should just keep going on, you know, with some of this stuff, and then maybe we pick up on the next episode some of the more relational stuff.
That's not so much the little jottings. I went, and then the last thing I did and put a circle around was the Bermuda Triangle. So why don't we delve in? I mean, you've got the Bermuda Triangle as this mysterious space, which seems to defy or not obey the laws of time and space or gravity. Is a Bermuda Triangle. Well, it's some sort of triangle, but the triangle is an aperture.
That's an interesting concept. Can you kind of explain what that means? You know, like,
well, the triangle is an aperture because the one light through this aperture is incarnated in its sevenfold nature. Mm-hmm. The one light of your spirit through the triune nature of your soul is expressed through the sevenfold expression or version of that truth in daily life. And that's why we have incarnation after incarnation, because we can't paint the whole picture in one sitting. So for me, I say it's an aperture because it's about allowing the light in.
Right.
Because it was the word that gave birth to the light. Because there was darkness before. The word was sounded in the silence, the living silence, and the living darkness. And the darkness here simply is the true womb of light. And that's what Manly P. Hall said, that the darkness is the true womb of pure light. And therefore, out of the darkness, out of the silence came the word. The word gave birth to the light. The light carried the promise of the purpose into manifestation. And we're part of that. We're waking up to the fact that, who am I? Well, I am that I am. But at the moment, many of us are stuck in I am that.
That is absolutely true.
It's not the complete triangle.
It's a very important distinction.
Yeah.
You know, just even sitting in the I am is I think, difficult concept for a lot of people.
Well, because the sitting in the I am, at some point you have to leave the inner state of the I am and venture out to experience the I am in its full expression, and then not get caught into, oh, look what I've just created. I'm this. I'm that. No, I am that. I am. So the that we've created and identified with temporarily is simply the way for us to go, aha, duh. This is the spiritual duh moment, if you're going to go back to The Simpsons.
Yeah.
The spiritual duh moment is, oh my God, I am that I am. But I only know that it's like the prodigal son, the prodigal daughter. The only reason I know that is by being expelled from the father's house or my home,
Mm-hmm.
and then going out into the world and realizing, I want to go home. Where is home? Is it back to where you were born physically? Is it a state of beingness? Is it a point of synthesis? So the return, and we're on the return journey at the moment, which is what we touched into last time, the difference between involution and evolution.
Right.
Involution was getting us out of the house and into the journey.
Yeah.
And now the journey home is the forces of evolution and the energy of synthesis. And it's said that one of the avatars that overlights this present period of evolution for the planet and for the solar system is the avatar of synthesis.
Can you maybe expand on that just a little bit when we think about synthesis? Obviously, for me, I immediately think of a synthesizer,
Right.
which is just manipulation of waves.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So, like for someone that doesn't play with the synthesizer, doesn't understand what does that mean in a practical sense for a person? Like how are you synthesizing this energy? And
Well, you're bringing it back into coherence. If you want to stay with your sort of resonance,
right.
You're bringing it back into coherence, so they're not two things pulling up each other apart.
Right.
So the synthesis of aspects of your life is that there's a realization of how they all serve the expression of the one, or the expression or the realization of that consciousness that knows itself to be one. And you don't know yourself to be one until you've synthesized. So the act of synthesis creates a wholeness out of the dismembered parts of your previous being. Now, that wholeness itself is not the totality of the picture. That's why in psychosynthesis, it's called a partial synthesis. It ain't the whole thing, but it's a synthesis of what you've created in your life. And from that point of synthesis, that becomes the base from which you go out and create the next sphere of synthesis and wholeness by venturing out and experiencing the if you like, some dissonance, some difference.
Right.
So synthesis is how you bring the experience of the differences together to realize the differences are the different expressions of the one. It's about unity through diversity, not divisiveness. Diversity is not divisiveness. So synthesis is how the many aspects of the one come home and realize that they are complementary.
Because that's where it gets interesting, isn't it? On the edges of that resonance.
Well, yeah, and guess what? If you just got two political parties duking it out, where is the synthesizing agent in politics? Where is the synthesizing agent in human relations? Where is it? Well, guess what the synthesizing agent is, Joey? It's called love.
That's right.
Go back to our first podcast of Series 3.
Yeah.
This third season. It's brought together by a loving understanding of how the whole thing holds together, which you can't do unless you've experienced it. As we said, you don't know what love is until your heart's been broken. Until your heart's been broken into pieces, and then you put it back together through empathy, through loving kindness. So the synthesizing and the re-gluing of the parts together, just like the Japanese do, the broken glass with gold. That's what the gift of synthesis. There's more we can talk about, but that's my immediate response to your question now. So
yeah. That also might be a good place to stop on this one.
What would you like to leave the people who are listening to the podcast with? Is there anything you would want them to ponder?
I think looking in your own life and seeing 2 points of tension and how you can stand in the middle and elevate. I think that's because we can all find points of tension, but how do we stand in the middle and from the middle elevate and rise?
Thank you. That's brilliant, because that's what Roberto Assagioli did on an individual level with helping to resolve the pairs of opposites. he had this vision of the synthesis of nations. When nations would do that, they'd stand opposite to each other or with each other, but not in polarized partnership. They would find a point of synthesis where they would realize they are all aspects of the one. So I thank you. That's a great question for people to ponder until our next episode.
That's right. Okay.
Thanks,
All
Joey.
right. Thank you, Michael.